I So I apologize. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties, so I'm like not actually going to be looking right at my screen, but bear with me. But anyway, so thanks so much for having me. My name is Micheline Dion. I'm the Director of Sustainability with R&G Strategic. So just first, I live and work in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm Mi'kmaqi, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. So we know land acknowledgements aren't really enough, and reconciliatory justice needs to be active. So I suggest we start with truth. So, for instance, I learned recently that colors are actually verbs in Mi'kmaq. This is because colors can change over time, and the Mi'kmaq believe that everything is in flux and in constant motion. So as you can imagine, this is actually a very powerful perspective for our creative team. And so RNG operates at the intersection of sustainability and ESG and storytelling and communications. So we bring sustainability for business experts to the table to work on everything from sustainable brand building to impact storytelling to formal reporting, materiality, stakeholder engagement. And we are ISO certified to handle greenhouse gas inventory management, which we often do as a function of disclosures and helping our partners to walk the walk before they can talk the talk. So more specifically, we're a for impact agency because sustainability and brand are forever married. True return from investment in sustainability isn't only about risk and resilience, it's also reputational. So we help our partners build what we like to call sustainable brand equity. So what is that? It's the reputational ROI you get for your positive impact and an investment in socially and ecologically sustainable progress. So we don't just support mining companies. We work with all kinds of organizations to improve how they communicate on sustainability, from banking to clean tech startups to utilities and governments. So what does RNG's expertise mean like for you in this context? Well, we think of ourselves as connecting your sustainability journey and storytelling engagement with your stakeholders. So your customers, investors, employees, suppliers, and communities, helping them understand you and your progress and what it means for them and the planet. So at RNG, we see it as our job to ask those stakeholders what they think, how they feel, what's important to them, and especially when it comes to addressing a constantly evolving field where expectations and issues just seem to change by the day. And this is Halifax, by the way. So if any of you work in the sustainability or ESG space, you'll understand better than most that expectations and best practice in this field are a constantly moving target. But before I move on, I know for those who don't work in the space, there can be some confusion on what sustainability means and how it's different from ESG. So briefly, sustainability is at its core really a state of being. It's a mindset that holistically encompasses how a company chooses to operate. So like a completely sustainable company would only ever use resources as quickly as they're able to replace them. Like whether we're talking about natural resources, human resources, or financial resources. So to do this effectively, companies typically incorporate sustainability considerations into every aspect of their business. Now, when we say ESG, it's really just an acronym used in the investment community as a measure of business performance on sustainability. So the term itself refers to the three major brackets when assessing sustainability performance: environment, social, and governance. So that's why you'll see the term ESG used most when it comes to sustainability reporting. Now, speaking of sustainability reporting, back to a constantly changing landscape. So expectations for reporting seem to shift on the daily with new standards being released, new mergers taking effect, and new regulations setting like really strict requirements for reporting also starting to emerge. A single company might be expected to report on every single one of these standards you see here to their different stakeholders. But then you also have to keep up with the competition to keep your advantage. So a great example is the latest trend over the last 2 years to set targets for net zero greenhouse gas emissions to show alignment with the Paris Agreement, which aims to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees. So it sounds wonderful. All of the world's largest companies and largest emitters pledging to solve the greatest existential crisis of our time. And for a while, consumers were buying it too. There were countless corporate and consumer articles and blogs being released about corporations stepping up, stock prices inched higher, and companies were appearing like real champions of climate change. But then when people started to dig a little deeper, the backlash began. There were waves of criticism on social media, opinion articles from major news outlets, and legal challenges and penalties were slapped onto a lot of businesses for jumping on the climate bandwagon for the PR without actually making any real contributions to climate change. Another great example, let me show you another image from Halifax. This is an anti-racism vigil from 2020. Like some of you might remember what happened at that time. So social issues like equity and justice can reach a tipping point overnight. George Floyd's murder launched an anti-racist ripple effect in 2020 that caught a lot of brands unprepared. We knew, and we still know, this issue is incredibly important to stakeholders. So why did so many companies look like they're scrambling to catch up? Brands are in a challenging spot as stakeholders demand real action on the issues they care about. But how do we communicate about the challenges effectively when there's such a wide range of knowledge on these issues? And especially when it's too easy to let the loudest voices on social media dictate how our communities feel. So just take climate change, for example. When asked about the cause of climate change, many Canadians refer to the ozone hole. And the most common climate solution given in focus groups, recycling. And yet, an overwhelming majority of Canadians now agree that climate change is a major problem. Its awareness of climate change is now pervasive, it's real, it's on people's minds. Denial at this point is really just relegated to Twitter trolls and the occasional hardline executive or politician. So brands don't need to create awareness that climate change is happening. They just have to share what they're doing about it. But so why is it difficult for brands to be seen as leaders on climate? It's because their messaging is rarely focused on real, tangible action and why the actions they're taking actually matter. So it turns out, if you want to get that message across, I'm sure it won't come as a surprise when I tell you the thing that you can do is a story. So what are the elements of a great story? And when we have to engage people on how well we're doing or where we want to be innovators or leaders, how do we use the power of storytelling when it comes to sustainability? So R&G has a three-prong approach to how we approach storytelling with our clients. So first, people filter information through a lens of their own values, worldviews, peer influences, and emotions. And research consistently proves that peers with alignment of these criteria are the most influential messengers. So the messenger is like 99% of the key to success, and any great influences on how people respond to a message. So this means engaging early and often, creating a two-way dialogue, and ensuring communities impacted see themselves in your messenger. So second, be real about it. Connect it to your core ideology and values. If your sustainability efforts aren't deeply tied to your brand purpose and who you are at the heart of your business, you can run the risk of your efforts being perceived as inauthentic. And then third, simply, can you measure it? So when I say measure, I mean, can you get your hands around it? Does it seem real? Is it easy to understand? And are you backing up your claims with evidence? So of course, I have to say, like, you do have to reapply this criteria to any of your sort of like material sustainability issues and each of your stakeholder segments and channels. But let's look at a couple examples from outside the mining industry just to kind of show you what I mean. So Bud Light, they've been in the news quite a bit related to their diversity and inclusion advertising. So what about this? Would they be consistent and embedded and connected to their brand purpose? Is what they're doing measurable? Is it conscious of their community? So let's dive in and do a little research. So it's no secret that substance abuse levels are significantly higher within the LGBTQ community, about 20 to 30% of the population, compared to 5 to 10% of the general population. So is Bud Light, as a liquor company, doing anything to address this issue in their campaign? Maybe acknowledge the issue while they're hyping their beer at Pride? That certainly would have been the context to do it in. And is this diversity, equity, and inclusion campaign just an add-on to their business? Like, how real are these people about queer rights? Well, according to investigative reports, Bud Light's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, donated over 200 grand to anti-LGBTQ politicians in the last 2 years, including 2 directly responsible for tabling anti-LGBTQ legislation. So you might be thinking it's not a lot of money, or, they could have donated for other reasons, or maybe they also donate to legislators who have made progress on LGBT rights. And you could be right, but the point here is that pro-LGBTQ messaging is going to fall on deaf ears, and there will be public backlash, like there was in this case, if it's not connected to community, if it's not transparent, or if it's not tied to purpose. And so we can clearly see from this that this campaign was just sort of an add-on for them. If it was tied to purpose, they could draw a hard line on donating to anti-LGBTQ legislators, or working towards efforts to prevent substance abuse within the community, and appear a lot more authentic in their messaging. So compare and contrast that with Athletic Brewing Co. So it's a non-alcoholic brew who have actually doubled and tripled their donations to LGBTQ organizations over year from their sale of the Rainbow Wall beer, which they launched in 2021. It's part of their mission with this release to create safe spaces within sports for the LGBTQ community, and help those individuals realize their fitness and health and wellness goals. So basically, their customers in a nutshell. They've even gone above and beyond to create an inclusive gym finder that identifies fitness spaces across the country that have a supportive LGBTQ community, so that those individuals can continue their fitness journey. So to summarize, what does all this mean in practice? How does sustainability storytelling become interactive, tied to your brand's purpose, and how does it demonstrate integrity? So one thing is to embrace complexity. Don't try to oversimplify these complex issues. Give your stakeholders a chance to hear the whole story with context. Communications teams should never operate in a silo. If you're communicating about a sustainability issue, that your sustainability team should be involved every step of the way to make sure that what you're saying is accurate. Use the resources you have at your disposal. So your teams and employees can be champions of the great work that you're doing. Any goals or targets should be set from the top. So if we don't see your ambitions permeating throughout the organization, we won't believe it, and you likely won't reach your goals anyway. And the number one most important thing is do the work. So don't make a net zero commitment if you have no real plan to get there. Don't announce anything until you can show real tangible efforts and metrics on your progress. It's better to not say anything at all than to make empty promises. So I'll just leave you with this one last thing on what sustainable brand equity ROI looks like. So it's small, people-centric, consistent, embedded brand messaging efforts. And it's a journey of 1,000 steps. That's why we call it a practice. So thanks very much. And hopefully that was quick enough that we could make up a little bit of time here.